Hello, friends. This is your friend in health, Dr. Sandeep Jassal from LiveLifeMore. And we have with us special guests. One special guest whom you have already met, none other than Dr. Arun Garg, who had graced the Live Life More podcast 2 months back. And he's such an achiever, such an established personality in South Asian health. And Dr. Garg introduced me, connected the dots of some like mindedness with Mr. Dheeraj Garg. Mr. Dheeraj Garg has been an avid author writing about good health, and he just published a wonderful book that is The Secret of Good Health is Simpler Than You Think. So, Dr. Garg, he's joining me from Vancouver, and technology has made it possible that Dheeraj ji is sitting in India, in Delhi, and we are able to talk to each other live through this podcast. And I am right now also in Greater Vancouver, Canada. So let us start our conversation. Dheeraj ji, welcome to our podcast, and thank you, Dr. Garg, for introducing me to Dheeraj. And Dheeraj, by the way, will has been an engineer all his life and has authored this book on health. This is very interesting. And good health, if we understand, the body is an engineering masterpiece of nature. And an engineer, if he decodes that science of the body's functioning and the metabolism, then that brings a special angle to that understanding. This is what I would like to highlight in this podcast. This is what I would like you all to understand how an engineer decoded the body's engineering and has brought it forward from that angle. So Dheeraj ji, बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका. We welcome you. And Dr. Garg, thank you once again for sparing your valuable time and being on this show.
Pleasure is ours.
Thank you,
So,
Sandeep, for inviting me. Great to be here.
so we try to bring the best possible integrative medicine, integrative approaches to create, maintain, achieve good health. This is what is all we are about, Live Life More. And the motto is to add years to life and add life to years. This is what we had trademarked. And so, keeping that tradition, let us start our conversation. So, Dheeraj ji, I would like you to tell me about your story, how you got into good health, how first you achieved good health, improved your own health, and how you thought of bringing it to the people.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Sandeep ji. Like as you mentioned, I am an engineer by profession, but unfortunately, health doesn't spare anyone, or disease doesn't spare anyone. And I became a diabetic about 5 years back. I already had a family history of heart disease and cancer, so this really alarmed me. And because it's very well understood that the family history and genetics matters a lot, so it seemed like a fate to me that I'm going to face these diseases. And obviously, once you know that you're going to get something, you probably leave it to that, and you don't even want to try to make an effort to change yourself. But then I realized that that is not always the case, and there are people who have been able to lose weight significantly and control their diabetes, and started learning more about it. And uh, the more I learned about it, and I found it was not that difficult. And by making some small dietary changes, I was able to achieve very quick results. Started losing weight within the first week, and within 3 months, I was able to completely get off my diabetes medication. And this I find it so simple to do. I started learning more about it. I read a lot of medical literature and medical books. I also did a certification in nutrition from US, and diabetes reversal course from South Africa. And I also learned that many of the modern chronic diseases are actually associated with the same root cause, which causes diabetes. And diabetes is just the tip of the iceberg. And I realized that if I could make these changes so simply, why cannot others? And chronic disease is a big epidemic in India as well as the rest of the world. If people can make certain lifestyle changes, and it can actually give them a better health, so why not to go and tell them? So I started writing on social media. I started like giving small talks to my friends and extended family, and some of them actually followed the guidelines and also started making health improvements. So this basically motivated me even more, and it has been over a year now. I have been posting regularly on social media. I have built a reasonable amount of followership on LinkedIn, and then I also realized that I need to structure all my information, because there's so much information available on internet, and a lot of it is misinformation as well, and it's very confusing for people what to really follow and not. So then I went about and I wrote my book, where I put in all my learnings, and it has been well appreciated. And some of the people has already given me feedback that they have made some changes in their lifestyle and they started benefiting it.
Great. And social media, friends, yes, ever since the social media came into its present shape, it has been very helpful in connecting people. It has been very helpful in highlighting the good work which good people are doing. But at the same time, some bad work is also being highlighted unnecessarily and amplified up to the extent that people start believing in that. And I'm so very glad that social media is something, or media is something, which connected me with this great personality, Dr. Arun Garg. When I landed in Canada, I started presenting a health program on ZTV Canada. And that is where I got an opportunity to get introduced to Dr. Garg, and I conducted a talk show with him on World Heart Day. Since I had come from India with a history of roughly around 3,000 talk shows dedicated to health on the Live Life More platform, so this was an automatic thing for me to start over here a health talk show. And that is where I met Dr. Arun Garg. And then you talk about the social media, your articles which you publish on social media. And interestingly, I got to know that you, in spite of being a nephew of Dr. Garg, you got connected to him when he came across one of your articles on social media on health. That is a very interesting story. How did the dots get connected, Dr. Garg? Please elaborate on that.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having us, and thank you for making this effort and contributing to building healthy society through your efforts and the work you're doing. So, Sandeepji, gratitude to you. And in our community, certainly in British Columbia, this is a major show now, and I think it's our hope that through these efforts we'll reach out to as many people. So this is wonderful.
Thank you.
um, uh, my own interest, as being a medical doctor, always been in this area, but I was not aware till about 15, 20 years ago how bad the problem is in our community. You know, as a medical doctor, you're doing your things, but you never connect the dots. But now, in hindsight, it is a big problem. If you were to come to Royal Columbian Hospital renal dialysis unit, you will see more than 50% of the people are of South Asian heritage. So something has to be done. So that got me going in building, and we created Canada India Network Society. And the very word Canada India is to link Canada with India on health. And what our work in our own community, because we have such a large South Asian population here, but more important, connecting with India. So because of that, I'm always searching social media to see who's writing what. And I came across this article from somebody called Dheeraj Garg. And I knew my nephew, and his name is Dheeraj Garg, but he is an engineer, and he was in England practicing his engineering. Uh, and then he came back and he was in India. So I never connected that it's him. But then light bulb went, and I said, okay, let me inquire. And it turns out to be it's my nephew. And I really congratulate him because he's done it on his own. And I had to go to 17 years of learning to learn few things about biochemistry and health. And this gentleman, on his own, in 2 years, has become quite knowledgeable and now is applying his logic and the, as you pointed out, the engineering skills of problem solving to this. So much so that Canada India Network Society has also asked him to join forces, and he is our director of in India for Canada India Network Society. So jointly now we're going to be taking our message to bigger audience in India because the need is just so huge and the solutions are low lying fruits. And so I think this is very positive. And as we will talk more, it's even more positive because, on one hand, our heritage uh, might force us into certain lifestyle, but other hand, our heritage is so encumbering to give us incentives to do the right thing. And what I'm talking about is the learnings of Ayurveda and learnings of yogic science. So we're very excited about this.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Garg. By the way, dear friends, Dr. Garg is one of the senior most physicians and health, icon of integrative health in South Asian health. He's the medical director of South Asian Health Institute, as I introduced him in our earlier episode. And he is by training a PhD, by education a PhD, as well as an MD. And he's been associated with the prestigious University of British Columbia in Vancouver over here. And he has been heading the Department of Clinical Biochemistry. And that is a science where we study the body's internal chemistry, how the chemical reactions change, how the chemical reactions navigate our body's health, and when we are unhealthy, what biochemical changes happen in the body, and how do we detect and correct all those disorders. Let's come back to Dheerajji's research now. Uh, Dheerajji, what message do you think that you were able to bring, and what motivated you to write? And you've already told that you were having some health priorities which you wanted to solve, and then you wrote them in the book. So let us now talk about the solution. You talked about the problems which we face as a race: South Asians, Sri Lankans, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, for that matter, Nepalis, and we Indians, the biggest population. And now, what do you think? Where does the solution lie? What solution you try to emphasize upon in your book, The Secret of Good Health?
Yeah. So I think the solution, because being an engineer, I always try to really understand the logic of it. And what I found is that our body is really remarkable. It has a remarkable healing power. It needs to be given the right ingredients for it to be able to do its magic. Unfortunately, with modern lifestyles and modern food, specifically ultra processed food, and the kind of life we have, which is very stressful and very fast life. So we have really forgotten some of the principles. And as Dr. Garg mentioned, our heritage of Ayurveda is really very powerful, the lifestyle which it promotes. So it's very similar to that, the solution which I try to propose in my book. Uh, Food is the biggest culprit, as I've identified. Anywhere between 70 to 80% of the culprit is really food. And if we are able to understand what's wrong with our current diet and what changes we need to make, I think we have really made a good progress. And I think that one of the first things uh, is we need to understand that sugar is really poison for us. There is no case for added sugar. Uh, we do not need to add sugar in any of the food we eat. Beyond that, uh, especially Indians being vegetarians, their diet is very heavy in carbohydrates. And it's a very simple thing to understand that carbohydrate eventually becomes sugar inside our body, right? So if we have a very high carbohydrate diet, we are taking sugar, whether we believe it or not, right? So if we can cut down on carbohydrates and cut down on ultra processed foods, then half the battle is won, right? We just start making or start seeing differences on a health on a very, I'll say, noticeable basis in a very short time, right? And beyond that, one has to manage their stress. One has to be physically active. One has to sleep well on time, right? And there are like other small things. But food is something you need to start first.
Great. So I'm also pursuing a course from American College of Lifestyle Medicine, that is food as medicine. And this is what I
Great.
have been using in my practice for the past 30 years or so. I graduated out of an Ayurvedic medical school, and that was way back in 1993. That is how I started my career. And I, out of my own interest in preventative health, there is a subject in Ayurveda called Swasthya Vritam, in the hit of swasthya,
Okay.
right? So, and that is about dinacharya, that is daily routine. That is about ritucharya, that is the seasonal routine, how we need to change our lifestyle according to the season, according to the climate outside. So, all this is such a wonderfully scripted wisdom of health and well-being, and I wanted to integrate that with the modern understanding of the human body, because we read anatomy, physiology, biochemistry in our undergrad degree. So that was something which sowed the seed of this curiosity in my body, in my mind, and I pursued a post graduation in preventive and promotive healthcare. And after 30 years, I talked to a gentleman who is an engineer by training, and who starts understanding the link and is able to correct his, correct, not, I won't say wrongdoings. We do wrong things because of not knowing that these are wrong. The mithai and everything we have around us, and then the routine Indian carbohydrate rich diet, which usually we always have. That is something which you corrected in yourself and got results. And that is wonderful. This is what I would like to highlight, and I would like to note it down, that at this juncture we are talking about the way we can correct our modern Indian diet, modern Indian lifestyle, in correcting, in preventing, as well as in managing and reversing, up to some extent, some metabolic disorders. Some metabolic disorders like diabetes, like high cholesterol, like high blood pressure, central obesity. And what about weight? Did you make some changes in the weight? And you said that within the few weeks you started losing weight. But how much weight did you lose in total from the moment you started working on your health, and then the final, uh, you know, um, health makeover moment when you thought that, okay, now you have improved a lot? Yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as I started making these changes, within the first week, I was able to lose 1.5 kgs, and within 6 months, I lost about 15 kgs. And
Wow.
this was like without staying hungry, without really doing any exercise, or I'll say excessive exercise, or normal routine exercise I was doing, with just the food changes. And I think the biggest thing was that it was simple. I was not staying hungry, right? The biggest challenge for people who are trying to lose weight is that they cannot really manage their hunger, right? And once I understood how our different hormones work, right? Our brain is very powerful, and brain is something which determines our hunger level, how tempted we are to eat, to eat something, and what our reward system of dopamine kicks in. So once you are able to understand how those hormones work, then you can really master it, right? Once you, I'm sure, like insulin resistance now, it's a buzzword. Everybody is familiar with it, but people do not understand that insulin resistance also causes leptin resistance, which where you fail to really recognize your satiety levels. Your ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, doesn't work effectively, right? So insulin resistance, everybody have started understanding, but we still fully do not appreciate how powerfully it impacts all other our hormonal functions, right? Once you start correcting your diet, your hormonal balance starts improving, and then everything falls in place. It's like magic to me. Like, it's so simple that people need. There is a. I will give an example of a friend who was not convinced that he can make any change. Right, I gave him a 10-day challenge that just for 10 days follow the diet which I suggest to you. And then I spoke to him after 3 months, and I was not expecting that he would have followed. And he told me that he was able to lose about 7 kgs in 3 months, and he had significantly improved his diabetes. Right, so it's such a simple thing. You just need to get started. If you get started and stick to it for even a few weeks, I'm sure people will really find remarkable results and improvements in their health.
Great. And if you have a mentor or coach like somebody who has himself undergone such a metamorphosis or transformation, then it is all the better. They say, well begun is half done. So, Dheeraj ji, you were talking about the diet which you advised to your friend and the one pattern of diet which you followed yourself, and that worked so very well. So let us discuss and let us spread the message of good health through the diet pattern which you followed.
Right. So let's look at typical Indian meal, more vegetarian perspective. So most Indians start their breakfast with either like some kind of a paratha, or they would take poha or upma. Uh, but all of this like is carbohydrate, and this is a very typical staple North Indian breakfast. Even though this is pretty seems to be pretty healthy, it's made at home. If you go to other southern India, they would typically start with idli, again, which is made of rice, right? And then during the lunchtime, people would eat rice, chapati, some dal, and some sabji, potato. And then evening, with snacks, typically a lot of people in office, they will eat a samosa, very common. And in the evening, again, we go back to the same, like dal, chapati, roti, similar stuff, right? But we fail to realize that this is a very heavily carbohydrate diet, right? And being a vegetarian, a lot of people are not eating even eggs, uh, or even if they're eating eggs, it's very like less, maybe once or twice a week. Right? So these diets can be almost 70 to 80% carbohydrates. And I'll just go a little technical here that these carbohydrates, uh, even though they're complex carbohydrates, these starches, they eventually turn to glucose inside our body and gets absorbed in our blood. And if it goes above a certain level, our pancreas has to release more insulin to push that glucose inside our cells, right? And if we continue eating more carbohydrates than what we need based on our activity level, this starts accumulating as fat. And South Asians are more prone to visceral fat, central obesity. So the fat starts accumulating in the belly, which is very inflammatory in nature. And as slowly we are eating a similar diet for long, the insulin levels keep increasing. And at some point of time, our pancreas cannot produce more insulin, and our sugar levels are now high enough for us to be classified as diabetic. And sugar, I think, is a very bad substance beyond a certain level. It glycates pretty much everything inside our body and causes a lot of damage. And because of high insulin, we keep getting fat. And because insulin is an anabolic hormone, we are not able to burn our fat into energy. Right. So even so, if we are not eating, we are not able to access that fat stores. So somebody who's insulin resistance is eating more and tends to get hungry very quickly, right? So it becomes a vicious circle. So they eat more, they get hungry, and they eat more again, and that craving starts in. So the simple way to reverse is, how do we bring our insulin levels down, right? If we have to bring our insulin levels down, we have to bring our glucose levels down, which is inside our body. And the simple answer is, if you eat less carbohydrates, you will have less glucose in your blood, your insulin levels will go down, and the reversal process would start. So obviously, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take few weeks to few months, depending on how metabolically healthy or how active you are. But that process pretty much happens for everyone to some extent. Right? Now, if you're not eating so much carbohydrate, then what do we eat? So something which is very deficient in Indian diet is protein. We are very protein deficient country, and because we are vegetarian, the protein sources are mostly pulses and legumes, which are decent sources of protein, but they still have very high level of carbohydrates. Right. So that means either you take little more eggs if you can, or you start eating more salads. Right. Reduce your chapatis and your rice. Right? Reduce your number of meals you eat. I'll probably touch upon again a little more in detail later. But then intermittent fasting. Uh, Ayurveda also promotes fastings of various kinds, right? So fasting is a very good way. But most people will not be able to start from day one. But once they start cutting down their carbohydrates, their insulin resistance starts reversing, then they can uh, like reduce the number of meals which they need to take. So I'll just quickly add one instance for myself. So when I was a diabetic, I used to get crazy if my breakfast was delayed even by half an hour. Right, and now it has been 1.5 years. I haven't taken breakfast because I don't feel hungry enough. Right, so it within a month of my dietary changes, I could not take breakfast because I was not hungry. Right? So this is like again I come back to the same word magic, right? And there is a science behind it, and that's what I tell to most people is that you just get started, right? You don't need to. A lot of people say that I need willpower. I do not have that willpower. I say you don't need willpower beyond a week or two, right? Your hormones will kick in, and you will be able to follow this diet very easily.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how to maintain that? Because what I have seen is in my practice also, people have lost weight. I have one of the best success stories of my weight loss program has been that a gentleman from my home city, Chandigarh, he lost as much as 65 kgs. Right? That's like a complete me coming out of somebody's
Right.
body, right? And a grown up me, right? I have been maintaining, I lost 15 kgs around 25 years back when I got into post graduation. And I was 75 at that time. And I lost 15 kgs, around 15 kgs at that time. I came down to 60. And I've been able to maintain that weight all throughout the last 25 years, nearly, and except for the one or two. So what I have set for myself is, I'm just quoting my example, that a trigger weight when I need to start thinking about my weight. It is not that, okay, if I was able to lose 15 kgs earlier, I should let my weight go up by 5 kgs and 10 kgs, then I'll start action. No. Even if I am, the trigger weight is 2 kgs, 3 kgs. If I touch 63, no, I start watching the same pattern and I'm able to reduce that 3 kgs. Reducing 3 kgs is much easier and shorter than reducing 15. 15 will need a lot of courage and long term sustainable, uh, you know, eating pattern change, right? So you're right in saying this. Absolutely great. The carbohydrate, which you touched upon, and there is a trend of keto diets, and I am a keto diet coach over here. But my thought process is that the school of thought which we follow is that protein is something which is pro health, and keto diet people have been doing around the globe. At one time they started replacing carbohydrate with fat, but since we have as a race we have so much of cardiovascular disease around us, and cardiovascular disease major risk factor is cholesterol, or the fat circulating in the blood. And if we start eating a lot of fat, and if there is a miscalculation in the amount of fat we eat, because every gram of fat is 9 calories as compared to every gram of protein, which is only 4 calories. So there's a less risk of adding surplus calories to our diet while restricting the carbohydrate by replacing carbohydrate with protein than with fat, and less risk of letting the cholesterol go up, the bad cholesterol go up. So wonderful. And what are the expert insights, Dr. Garg, you have to say to highlight
Yeah,
the.
yeah, very much so. First of all, I just want to reaffirm that lifestyle, diet, food is the major portion where you have control on, and you could control it. And for our listeners and viewers, some very simple things, very practical things. So, food, I say 5 Ks. I've written fair amount on it. क्या खाते हो, कैसे खाते हो, कब खाते हो, क्यों खाते हो, कितना खाते हो. And we're talking about क्या खाते हो, but equally important is कब खाते हो, कितना खाते हो, portion size, क्यों खाते हो, and कैसे खाते हो. Because this is all, I mean, each one can be 1 hour show with you. But I just want to emphasize that it's in your control, absolute control, to control your food, and food is thy medicine. And there is a biochemical evidence that glucose is one of the biggest culprit for chronic inflammation, because extra glucose glycolates the circulating proteins, and those proteins are very inflammatory, and that is the root cause. So there is scientific evidence, so we are not just talking about nice thing to do, there is a biochemical evidence. And other thing I would say is, um, as Dheeraj just said, our our diet doesn't get enough proteins. The portion should be, for easy sake, 40, 30, 30. So right now, if you look at average Indian diet, it's as high as 70% carbohydrates and 10%, 15% fat, and 10% proteins. And proteins are the master. And I believe in simplicity. So I would say just if we could increase our protein intake, and that's hard to do because the source of proteins are hard. But one has to try. But before you go there, even if you do one simple thing, and that is no added sugar, as Dheeraj said, and the problem with added sugar is that most of that sugar is simple sugar, and it gets rapidly absorbed, and it circulates that glucose very fast. Like you know that 1 teaspoon of sugar is 5 grams of sucrose, and that gives you 2 molecules of glucose and fructose. And that's another story about fructose. But if we just stay with glucose, in circulation at any given time, it's only a gram of glucose circulating in your blood. And just imagine what you're doing by loading your body with, I've seen people adding 2 or 3 teaspoons of sugar, white sugar, in their tea. And uh, that is the major cause, a very simple cause of our problem. So if people will make that change, no added sugar, and start with your drinks, tea, coffee, Coke, which has 13 grams of sugar in 1 can. Just imagine when your total body needs are no more than 80 grams. On 1 can, you're getting 13 grams. So I think if you become aware, as Dheeraj said, people are not aware. And I think our purpose is to make it simple and make it aware. And that book of Dheeraj has very good source of that awareness. He has compiled most of that information in very readable form, and it's very simply written English, and it's written from a perspective of a person. So I would highly recommend that people, if they want to learn more about, to get the book. It's available on Dheeraj, I believe it's available on Amazon.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's correct. It's available on
yeah,
Amazon.
yeah, yeah. So I would say these are very practical things, Sandeepji. No added sugar. Watch for protein intake, and balance your meal between the three main products, so fat, carbohydrates, and proteins. And reduce the carbohydrates, because our diet has, if you look at average Indian tray, it will have potatoes, it will have rice, and it will have grain, and all three are loaded with carbohydrates. 70%, 80% are carbohydrates. So I think if you want to make some change, instead of those three things, just have one of those in your meal. You don't have to go through fancy diets. Just have to. Indian food and Indian diet is very healthy. That's the other myth I want to reaffirm, that the tradition and the food is very healthy. It's just what we have done with it. Our habits, कब खाते हो, क्यों खाते हो, कैसे खाते हो, कितना खाते हो, and proportion of carbohydrates, fat, and proteins. And proteins is a major issue in how to get enough proteins without going into meat. So you have to look for cheese, various types of cheese, but nuts and our lentils. But you have to increase those, like chickpeas, which are very important. Uh, that's all available. But without getting into the complexity of it for today's show, if they remember that carbohydrates are the main culprit, diabetes is preventable. Diabetes is reversible for a certain extent. We are talking about type 2 diabetes. We are not talking about other types of diabetes. But most important is no added sugar.
Great, great message, sir. And I think we have more or less summarized the book and the theory which you tried to put in the book. And it is around 38 minutes of talking time, which we have already done. And that brings to us to the final stage of this podcast, where we would like a final message from your side. Why, uh, what is the take home message you would like to give, which you have tried to give in the book? And anything in the shortest possible thing, what is the most effective message you tell to your people wherever you go? What you have
Right.
done to your health?
So, my simple message here is that your health is in your hands, right? Nobody can really make you healthy. Healthcare is sick care. You go to a doctor when you are sick, but if you want to stay healthy, you have to be self motivated. You have to spend some time learning about your body. It's a gift given by the God, but you need to learn more about it. And by making simple changes, you can really stay healthy. And you really don't need to really learn a very complex science behind it. Just make certain changes, reduce your sugar, add more protein, and you're good to go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Garg, for sparing your valuable time on a Saturday morning over here by Vancouver time. Incidentally, it is my birthday today and I'm recording. My purpose of life is to spread good message of good health, and that is what I am doing on my birthday. What a better way to start another year around the globe. Thank you very
Yeah, yeah.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Thank
us,
you.
and happy birthday, and may God give you long life and the
Thank you, sir.
blessings.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dheeraj. Thanks
Thank you, Sanjeev
for
ji.
joining us. It is Saturday evening over there, around 10 p.m. in
Right.
India right now.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I'll take a break for a while, and then I'll try to connect with you again on some other topic on good health. And thank you very much once again, Dr. Garg, for connecting me with such
Yeah,
a
no, I
wonderful
think
person.
anytime there's so much to share, and I think I'm sure Dheeraj will be available to share each chapter of his book. He could go book by book to make it practical. And now we have introduced the concept, and I'm available anytime you need or any work with anybody, as long as we could lower the burden of chronic diseases, build healthy society. Especially that's our commitment on your birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored to have such good people around me and helping me in this mission of creating good message of good health, adding years to life, adding life to years of people. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye
See you.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.